Please welcome our next speaker, Terry from Tapio.
What's up, Paris? Okay, this is quite bright. Maybe I'll stand over here. All right, so I hope you guys are not gonna fall into a food coma after lunch. I'll try to make this as exciting as possible. So today, I'm gonna be talking about unified liquidity standards for staking and crowd loan derivatives. So before I start, just want to quickly introduce myself. My name is Terry. I'm one of the co-founders at Nuts Finance. We've been building on the blockchain space since early 2018. Our bread and butter is building financial primitives protocols. So we've done middlewares, we've done protocols, and we've done applications. It was around 16 months ago, so last year, February, that we ventured into the Polkadot ecosystem. And so far, the experience has been absolutely phenomenal, not in terms of just the technology side, but also being able to work with some of the finest builders in this space. So very quickly about Nuts Finance. Why is it called Nuts? Because as I mentioned, our bread and butter is building different types of financial primitives on the blockchain. So back in 2018, we knew that this was going to be a multi-project and multi-step approach. So we sort of want to build the different nuts and bolts to enable an open financial ecosystem. So hence the name. So with diving into today's topic, unified liquidity standard for staking and crowd loan derivatives. So before I actually jump into it, I just want to quickly see, a show of hands, who is currently participating in staking or crowd loans with their DOT assets? Okay, great. So I'm not going to ask this question, but I'm sure for those who are already participating in either staking or crowd loan, there's actually two avenues to participate. One is via Polkadot.js, a very powerful tool, but at the same time, not the most intuitive and not the most user-friendly. The second way is to actually participate staking and crowd loan through some of the DeFi solutions offered by parachains or centralized service providers like exchanges or node providers. So for today's talk, I'm going to focus on the latter, which is the staking derivatives that gets generated if you guys are currently providing DOT via any of these DeFi solutions by parachains. So I want to also quickly explain, the two primary use cases for the DOT asset right now. There's two of them. One obviously is staking. Basically staking your DOT to help secure the security of the relay chain. And then the second one is crowd loan. So contributing your DOT to help a parachain secure a slot auction. So what happens is if you guys are participating via any of the parachain's DeFi service, when you're contributing your DOT, you will actually get a receipt in return. And this receipt is what we're classifying them as a form of derivatives. So you get two forms, right? You get two types. One is the staking receipts, and then the second one is the crowd loan receipts. So just from here, it already generates two different formats of receipts or derivatives. So ultimately, what DOT derivatives are individually, DOT staking derivatives is a token representing the underlying locked stake DOT. And on the other side, DOT crowd loan derivatives is a token representation of the underlying locked DOT contributed to crowd loans. So now I want to quickly talk about what are some of the benefits of participating in these staking or crowd loan derivatives. There's many of them, okay? There's many benefits. The first one being higher yields. I'm sure a lot of you guys, that's one of the primary driver for you guys to contribute your DOT. The second reason is it actually unlocks liquidity for additional use cases. So DeFi in specific. So what that means is if you are contributing your DOT via the native Polkadot.js staking service, or crowd loan, your DOT is actually locked and you can't really use them. And that's one of the reasons why these parachain teams have introduced these liquid staking and liquid crowd loan solutions, so that it provides holders the flexibility to actually use those assets. So once you have this flexible format, you can actually use them in, you could trade them, you could borrow against them, you could stake to earn further yields. And then the third benefit is it lowers the participation requirement. So this point is actually quite interesting because a lot of you guys might think that, right now, in order to participate in staking is actually not that expensive. Yes. But if you also looked into Ethereum, back just maybe like 3-4 years ago, also participating in staking was not that expensive. But now, it's actually, for a normal user or for somebody that's just entering the ecosystem, it has actually become quite expensive for them to directly participate in staking due to Ethereum's price. So with these derivatives, it actually lowers the participation requirement. And that's the whole purpose of some of these parachains, to introduce these liquid staking solutions so that they could appeal to more people, a larger audience. And then finally, there's the flexible redemption. So with staking, if you're going through the native format, like staking through a native format or participating in crowd loan through a native format, it's 28 days to unbond for staking, and it's 96 weeks to unlock for crowd loans. So again, right, it sort of like locks up the liquidity, but what these derivatives provides is they allow for a more flexible redemption period. So this table here just shows some of the parachains that have introduced their own liquid staking and liquid crowd loan solutions. So there's Akala, Parallel, Bifrost, and Equilibrium. And you can sort of see like how many dots they've sort of attracted via their liquid staking solutions and liquid crowd loan formats. So all in all, this is a general landscape of what the DOT derivatives space looks like currently. And one line to summarize. Staking in crowd loan derivatives offers increased utility and flexibility for locked staked tokens. So everything sounds super magical, right? But there's obviously some drawbacks. And this is where we identified when we were looking into the Polkadot ecosystem 16 months ago. So some of the problems with these staking or crowd loan derivatives are, number one, it creates liquidity silos. So let me explain what that means. So each of these individual staking or crowd loan derivatives, they have different yield mechanism, as well as potentially different types of redemption mechanism. So this makes things actually a little bit more complicated from a user's point of view. And ultimately, with these different mechanisms, it also isolates that liquidity into its own pocket. So you can think about it as like, parachain 1 has their own liquid staking DOT, and parachain 2 also has their own liquid staking DOT. But the two actually have different yields, the different redemption. From a user's point of view, like which one should you use? The second problem is adoption challenge. So this one kind of relates to the first, which is liquidity silo. Ultimately, from a parachain standpoint, if they're introducing these liquid staking or liquid crowd loan solutions, they're competing against each other for liquidity because they're going after the same users that are holding DOT, trying to attract them to contribute their DOT to their own DeFi solutions. So again, right, if we look 3 to 5 years down the line, what's going to happen is Parachain 1's liquid staking DOT might be drastically, outnumbering, Parachain 2's liquid staking DOT. So we're going to see category leaders, and we're kind of seeing that right now. If you guys refer back to the table in the previous slide. So what does that mean? Like if you have sort of a category leader in terms of the staking DOT, that means that from a builder standpoint, I'm not sure how many builders are here, but from a builder standpoint, you will come to the evaluation phase where, okay, which staking DOT or liquid staking DOT do you want to adopt? And ultimately, it's very natural for you guys for the builders to choose to adopt, obviously, the category leaders, the ones that have the most volume, because that one has the most liquidity. And then it makes it easy for you guys to kind of bootstrap your applications. And what's going to happen to the long tail staking derivatives? It's going to become very hard for these long tail staking or crowd loan derivatives to have additional use cases. So that's the adoption challenge. So all in all, different staking and crowd loan derivatives format causes liquidity fragmentation, which reduces overall capital efficiency. It's kind of rhetorical because, it's kind of ironic because the whole purpose of having these liquid staking or liquid crowd loan solutions is to increase utility. But once you have so many different versions, it actually reduces capital efficiency. So that's how we kind of looked at this problem, and that's exactly where our solution at Tapio aims to solve. So what is Tapio protocol? By definition, it's a synthetic asset protocol designed to unify different formats of staking and crowd loan derivatives into a highly efficient standard. In simple language, that means no matter whether you're holding liquid staking DOT version 1 or liquid staking DOT version 2, you can roll that up into our synthetic version. And with this synthetic version, you can actually apply it across the entire Polkadot ecosystem. In other words, you have native DOT at the bottom layer. On the second layer, you have these staking and crowd loan derivatives. And then on the third layer, we actually combine them back into one synthetic asset. And with this one synthetic asset, whether you're a user or you're a builder or you're a parachain, it makes life a lot easier because you're just dealing with one standard. So we recently launched the synthetic DOT on the Acala network. It's called T-DOT. So what is T-DOT? Number one, it's a unified standard for staking and crowd loan DOT derivatives. Right now, we're dealing with, T-DOT encompasses liquid staking DOT introduced by Acala. So there's around 6 million LDOT via the Acala platform so far. And we're working with the Acala team to incentivize or attract users to put those LDOT into the T-DOT layer. T-DOT is currently, as I mentioned, backed by a liquidity pool composed of native DOT and liquid staking DOT, LDOT. And yeah, it's the first synthetic DOT launched on the Acala network, but our solutions can actually be deployed across different parachains. We're just starting off on the Acala network because obviously they have very stable and huge volumes in terms of these liquid staking solutions. So it made sense for us to start there. The diagram on the right just outlines how it kind of works in terms of the liquidity pool. So you have native DOT, you have crowd loan DOT, and then you have staking DOT. One level up, you can actually roll that into, so DOT produces the DOT derivatives, crowd loan DOT derivatives, and staking produces the staking DOT derivatives. And then combining with the native, that actually goes into T-DOT. So let's spend a little bit of time to talk about the benefits. Okay, what are the benefits of T-Dot? There's a number of them again. The first one is the peg. So this is very critical in terms of our system because if T-Dot cannot maintain a peg with dot, then it's actually pretty useless. And I would like to explain how the peg works in a very simplified way. When you're holding T-Dot, because it's backed by dot and L-Dot liquidity pool, that pool is always over collateralized. So that also means that if you're a holder of T-Dot, you can always redeem back into either dot or L-Dot. And if you need to get L-Dot back into dot, you just need to go through the 28 days waiting period. So if you're thinking in terms of dot unit of account, T-Dot can always go back into dot. So that's the first benefit. The second benefit is the standardized yield handling and rewards handling for crowd loans. So as I mentioned a little bit earlier, different formats of staking and crowd loan derivatives have different yield mechanism as well as redemption periods. So we've standardized that process. So it makes it easy for users to claim the rewards or the staking yield. The third benefit is sustainable and competitive yield. And you guys can see this benefit directly via the Akala platform, actually. So what that means is T-Dot currently is made up of 3 different sources of yield. The first one is from the underlying L-Dot yield. So right now, if you guys have L-Dot staked, that's around 19%. So what happens is the T-Dot accumulates a portion, roughly 60% of that 19%. So that's the first source of yield. The second source of yield is from the actual swap fees that's collected via the synthetic asset pool. Because again, T-Dot is backed by dot and L-Dot. And if there are users looking to get out of their L-Dot position, that's where the swap occurs, and that's where the fees gets generated. So right now, all that fees gets distributed back to the T-Dot holders. And then the third one is token incentives. So this piece we haven't launched yet, but it is something that we will be introducing. So out of those 3 different sources of yield, 2 of them are actually quite sustainable. And then finally, it's highly usable. So once our product is live, something that we're working on as a team is to find additional use cases, which I'm going to spend time to talk about in the next slide. So there's 4 distinctive use cases for the synthetic dot, T-Dot. Number 1, the stable swap. So this is where we support the instant redemption for L-Dot. So as a user, you don't need to wait 28 days anymore if you want to get L-Dot back into dot. So this function is directly integrated into the Akala platform. And this is also where the swap fees gets generated. The second use case is DeFi primitives. So this is where with T-Dot, because we standardize the yield handling and because it maintains the peg against dot, it can actually be used in different types of application scenarios. And one very interesting scenario that we're working on is to make T-Dot a collateral asset to mint AUSD. And the second scenario that we're also working on is to make T-Dot a collateral asset for margin trading. The third use case is parachain liquidity optimization. So what this means is it sort of goes back to the liquidity silos, right? The adoption challenge for parachains. Because if we think 3 years down the line, there's going to be category leaders in terms of the staking dot, and there's also going to be long tail. So what's going to happen to the long tail? So that's where we come in. Okay, we can actually help aggregate those long tail staking dot into T-Dot, and then with T-Dot, you can actually borrow AUSD or collateralize it to trade. That's how we eradicate the whole adoption challenge by some of the parachains that have introduced these staking or crowd loan dot derivatives. And then finally, the last use case is cross-parachain swap. So this is a very natural function thanks to XCM. So what that means is if the synthetic dot liquidity pool is deployed on parachain A, which is made up of native dot and A dot, T dot moves over to parachain B, and then it can actually be redeemed back into native dot and C dot. So this is a very natural cross-chain swap experience that we're providing. So very quickly, I kind of explained this already. How does it actually work? The synthetic asset pool is actually backed by a stable swap engine. So stable swap basically allows the swapping between native dot and the dot derivatives. So from a LP standpoint, if you're contributing dot or L dot in this case, instead of just getting an LP in return, instead of just getting a simple LP token in return, what you're getting is you're getting a synthetic asset in return. And with this synthetic asset, you can actually use it across different parachains. The minting function right now, the synthetic asset minting function actually sits on the Akala network. So one thing that we're working on is expanding into other parachains to deploy our synthetic asset and synthetic and stable swap palettes. So that from a parachain's point of view, they can retain those TVLs. Okay, they can retain those TVLs from the dot, but the minting function gets generated from Akala, and once T dot gets minted, it can travel to different parachains. So we've been building in the Polkadot ecosystem for 16 months now. And these are some of the milestones that we've achieved. We received 2 Web3 Foundation grants. We're actually also one of the first teams to receive the Akala ecosystem grant. Recently, we've launched a 3 pool on the Karura network made up of AUSD, USDT, and USDC. So USDC is from Wormhole, and then USDT is natively minted on StateMine. We recently received 20,000 KSM treasury from the Kusama Treasury Council to bootstrap this pool. And then we have T-Dot that's currently live. It's been live for around 4 weeks now. And before launching T-Dot, we actually did the same implementation on Karura, and we launched a synthetic KSM. Very similar concept. It's backed by KSM and liquid staking KSM, LKSM. And then 3 pool. So we currently have 3 products live across the Karura and Akala platform. Just some stats for you guys to see how it kind of looks like for those who are interested. So T-Dot lives right now on Akala. So if you guys are in their swap interface, you can actually see the liquidity pool, the dot and L dot liquidity pool. So whether you're a trader or whether you're a liquidity provider, you can directly interact with our protocol via the Akala platform. Right, so far we have around 131K T-Dot minted. And the 2 yield that you guys are seeing right now, 9.46%, this is from the underlying L dot staking yield. And then the 8.07%, this is from the swap fees that we generate. And we distribute that back to users. So with those 2 adding together, you're looking at around 17.5% plus any additional token incentives that we're going to start soon. And then on the right-hand side, this is the 3 pool that we have launched on Karura. Around 1.52 million of stablecoin liquidity right now in this pool. This pool has been live for 4 weeks as well. The yield, we're looking at around 4.27%, and this yield is generated from swap fees completely. And then we also have the Kusama treasury that we're incentivizing users. So all in all, right now, like the yield for this one is at around 15 to 16%. So just to wrap up, Tapio protocol offers a single liquidity standard to unify different formats of dot derivatives. So this design with the goal of being truly complementary and composable with parachains and dApps in the Polkadot ecosystem. So, because one of the questions that I get a lot is, how do we compare with, the staking, like the staking dot or the crowd loan dot by other parachains? It's very simple. Like, it's the 3 layers approach. So there's a native dot, there's the staking or crowd loan derivatives introduced by parachains that fragmentizes the liquidity, and we sit on top. So for those who are interested, you guys can give us a follow. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maybe 1 or 2 questions, if we have someone in the auditorium that would ask one or not. No question? It seems to be okay and clear. Thank you very much for this presentation, and feel free to
Thanks, guys.
in the pillar room. Thank you.
So for our next panel, we have a panel organized by Mr. Rada from Web3 Foundation, and alongside with him, we have Zoe from everywhere, Polkadot, Fala, we have Bob from Zygus, we have Hoon from Asta, and Martin from Asta.
Just gonna wait for. Is he joining us? No?
I think it's just us.
It's just us, okay. All right, so the panel is about Polkadot education and sort of how to scale it. Everybody here is directly involved with education in one way or the other. So I think we're gonna explore opportunities and figure out a way to collaborate to settle all the challenges that are out there. Okay, so I'll start with some kind of introduction, setting a personal context of who we are, where we came from, and why blockchain and why Polkadot. So I'll start with myself. So I'm a technical education lead at Web3 Foundation. I've been working at the foundation for 1 year. Before that, I was a teaching professor in computer science at University of Vermont. I've been teaching artificial intelligence, and my research was computer vision. So if you know Coursera, so check computer vision basics course. I taught that. So I come with that background, and then I chose blockchain technology as my career path because it's something that very much aligns with my own vision for what my life should be. So I want to bring all those skills to sort of scale the education effort here. So that's my journey. I kept it purposefully short, but feel free to expand on your own personal journey.
Thank you, Rada. Hello, everyone. Zoe, my name from everywhere, as I got introduced just right now, but I think today I'm taking the position here as global head investor for Polkadot. But as you heard before, I'm also working with the Parachain Fala network. My journey into Polkadot actually began 2018 while I lived in Silicon Valley. Back then I studied information cybersecurity there and worked on some blockchain projects for data security and integrity, and got pretty quickly actually introduced to the Bitcoin and Ethereum community in Silicon Valley, which was pretty big back then. And then I went to the first Stanford Blockchain Summit and saw Vitalik speaking and so on. And I think back there was the first Polkadot meetup on the West Coast with the old guys from Parity that are unfortunately not here anymore. But this was my first introduction to Polkadot, and I was like so fascinated by the innovation of the technology, knowing about Bitcoin and Ethereum. I was just, wow, this is mind-blowing what is actually being built. And this was all pre-launch, right, 2018. So it was all concepts and like, does this even work? And like, how will this look like once the parachains are launching? And then Suraj, a friend of mine back then, he joined Parity also and got me into the ambassador program, which back then was created by Dan, Risa, and Hutch, actually working with Bob now at Zeitgeist. And since then I'm in the Polkadot ecosystem. I'm very happy about it and love to talk about education today.
Definitely.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Hoon Kim. I'm the CTO of Vostar Network. So my journey to blockchain, I guess, first of all, I started Bitcoin when I was like, I think it was like 2012 is when I first knew about Bitcoin through some, when I was a kid, like I'm still a kid, but like when I was a kid, like I used to do a lot of hacking, and some clients would pay me in Bitcoin. I had no idea what it was. So it was like, it's magic internet money. So it was cool. But 2017, I think, like was when I really started to see it like an actual magical thing where I had no idea how this could even be still alive. So I started to tinker with a lot of mining pools and just look into the protocol a little bit. That's when I guess you can say like I start to get really into the technical side of it. And now, fast forward a couple of years later, 2019 is when I first knew about Polkadot. Because I was working on a thesis at the time during my undergrad about asset settlement through an interoperable blockchain, basically creating like a stock market on-chain completely, and tried that with Ethereum smart contracts, but didn't really scale well. So I was like, I gotta make my own blockchain. And I've heard about the history of Gavin Wood, and he's currently working on Polkadot, and the vision of Polkadot really snapped with me. It was amazing, like connecting the world. Even the blockchain technology itself is like a way to connect the world, like how internet was, but going further, and now it can connect between different blockchains. That was so amazing, and now I'm so in love with this technology because we're introduced to a concept that we've never even thought about before, and trying to not only like show people but educate people why we've been losing this stuff and giving so much power to the corporations. And yeah, like for me, I feel like that's sort of part of my job is to show and tell people what is blockchain, what is Web3. And now I'm here.
Hi, my name is Martin. I'm the head of business development for Star Network. How I came into the blockchain in general, I got studied in computer science, then I switched my career because I was tired of because I was doing a lot of traveling with my work, so I stopped that, and I became actually a teacher in primary school. And I teach like 14 years to children, all the basics. And then 2.5 years, I joined a hackathon to come back to my first love with computers. And I joined the hackathon with Encode. And that's the place where Polkadot also was sponsoring with other layer 1 ecosystems. And that's where I fell in love with Polkadot. And I started looking into the upcoming parachains. And that's where I came across Blossom back then. And at that moment, I felt there were some things missing. Part of this was education part about Polkadot, as well as education part about what's Blossom, what are they doing. So I started doing some tutorials, starting to work for them like in my free time. Then I got offered the position by Soto Watanabe. And now I've been working for the company for 2 years now. And I'm very excited of being here. And came from teaching children, now teaching developers on how to use the Star. Sometimes, to be honest, they act the same as the children in school, but it's very excited, and I love the passion of teaching people about not only Polkadot, but the Star Network as a whole, so thank you.
I'm Bob. I'm the head of community development at Zeitgeist. My journey in crypto started in about mid-2019. I was going to school for just a general IT education and started exploring the blockchain and I started learning more and more about the different ecosystems, landed on Polkadot and realized this is something that I was really willing to pursue. At that point, I really just took a full dive into the ecosystem. Was lucky enough to know Hutch already, and just talking with him and having conversations with him. When he decided to start Zeitgeist, he brought me along with him, and yeah, I'm here now. Been working with him for the last year.
Great. So by now, you should see that Polkadot is just not about that relay chain itself. So it's also about the parachains that sort of run on top of it. So the panel itself is, as I see, very diverse. Like each of us have very unique background, but we all found our way to this seat today, right? So one way or the other. So I'm curious. So I was sitting at the booth outside for all day. I've got plenty of questions, but most of them are like, where do I get started? Okay, so first of all, I mean, learning about blockchain itself is so it seems like something that is esoteric or something like a magic or something that feels almost like a scam. If you just talk to the general public out there, they say, okay, so we don't even want to be involved with it, with all the public media coverage that surrounds it. And if someone actually searches for a project, all they find is a bunch of charts, analysis, price, or so the average person out there who's trying to learn about what we are doing, so all of it is covered in noise. And I personally feel there should be one centralized, I mean, in a decentralized world, there's one place where they could actually find the accurate information about what's going on. And as a technical education team, so we maintain Polkadot Wiki. So Polkadot Wiki is even though we maintain it, the contributions are open from everyone, right? So I would, given the millions of user traffic that we get, I would totally say even the parachain teams can sort of put their content on the wiki, and that's going to get a lot of exposure because people are going to search for Polkadot, and then you have a section dedicated to individual parachains as needed. So with that context, I want to see if someone asks you, Zoe, that I want to learn about Polkadot, what would you recommend them? What kind of resources would you recommend them?
I actually promote the Polkadot Wiki a lot because this is the one-stop hub where I went to when I started to learn about Polkadot. The cool thing is that it's very nicely structured, right? Learn, build, maintain. It's very easily to read, and you can go very deep. You have a good overview of things, even some embedded videos, from Alistair and so on. But I think for someone who wants to learn a bit more high level, we also have a Polkadot Crowdcast where I put in also a lot of content. When I started as ambassador, I was like, wow, okay, again, this was pre-launch, right? Pre-Genesis blog was mine. We were like, what are we actually doing here? So I started the initiative to do Polkadot conversations. So I was interviewing the people that are actually building Polkadot and asked them just very simple questions. What is the relay chain? How does the architecture look like? Then we went into parachains and so on. And so you will find some content there as well that hopefully helps you as well a little bit to break things, these complex things a bit more in a simpler way, breaks it down. Yeah, I think these are the two tools or channels that I would recommend today. I know that we can improve there a lot, put out more content, more webinars. I think this is always nice to hear, where people can engage also. So there's room for improvement, but these were the two ones I would recommend.
Thank you. And you can talk about Polkadot and your projects as well, how you would want general public to get access.
Right. So I guess in terms of first contact, right? People, what's the point of entry for normal people? Well, of course, that depends on who you're, what you're trying to do and who you are. For developers, since All-Star Network is a smart contract platform, we do have comprehensive developer documentation for understanding what kind of pre-compiled in the EVM environment are available, what chain extensions on WASM is available, also what is WASM and EVM, since it's even more complex with so many different environments. But we always try to direct them by just telling them or asking them like what do they want to make, just tell them what's the best option for them. So that's where I guess for developers they would go to, and another thing is for non-developers, end users who wants to use dApp staking, which for people who don't know, in All-Star Network we have this custom module called dApp staking where users can stake to a smart contract that they want to support, whether to continue the development or if they support the project for various reasons. And for those people, yeah, our portal is generally where to go, and we do have documentation for those people to understand how exactly this mechanism works. And for developers, how to register for dApp staking so that they can get featured on our portal page. And yeah, so there's quite a lot of things going on in there. I would say it's always challenging, and right now it's a little bit manual. But we are working really hard on providing those video tutorials, more friendly documentation, and I guess also a clear identity instead of dividing the documentation based on its purpose instead of just cramming everything into one document, so that it doesn't confuse people too much.
Yeah, I would like to add some things to this. We have been to some events that are not focused on Polkadot, but like general blockchain events. And when we have people coming to the booth or we do a talk, last year, like the first 20 minutes of your talk, you need to explain Polkadot before you can even explain what you are doing. And that's the same when people come to the booth. So, okay, you are layer 1 blockchain, but what are you doing on Polkadot? Oh, so you are building a blockchain on a blockchain. And for people who are not used to this kind of concept, it's very tricky. And it's very difficult to explain what Polkadot does for us. So we need to educate people first about Polkadot, and then we can say, but we are doing this. And it's a challenge, and I think we already got like workflows available on how we want to present us, like trying to make it as simple as possible, keep it simple for those end users, because at some conference, most of them are end users. They are just looking to get to know of your project, want to see what's going on. And then we got other conferences where it's most about builders. Then you can really focus into the technology. But for most of the conferences that we are attending, and people coming to the booth is more about end users. And then we have to keep it very simple. And try to avoid too much tech talk and try to avoid too much as this. What you usually say, that's what Huno was telling me, like, you can compare it with a continent like Europe. So Europe is Polkadot, and then you have the countries. Each country has its own governance, each country has its own people running around. And so Europe is not doing everything, so your country is doing what they are specialized in, so like France wine or something like this. And then Europe will try to manage it somehow. And that makes it more easier for them to understand than going into the technical things, because, but then again, like going into technical, because we are so excited about Polkadot, we love to talk about what's possible. Yeah. So it's like finding that balance, like expressing keeping it simple, but then again, you want to tell them, oh, but this. So that balance can be, I think we are getting better and better at it, and the same with Polkadot as well, or Parity. The education part is getting better and better, focusing on not only the builder, but also like educating around the technology. So yeah, I think still a lot of improvement, but I think we already did like a great job for this.
And actually, I want to add to Martin's point there too, because I think our network is now sort of getting this, hitting this maturity point where now we don't have to explain everything about Polkadot. If we're in a Polkadot booth and people are asking about like, why should I care about Polkadot? Are you guys like a smart contract on Polkadot? If they say that, then yeah, like we have to talk about like the whole concept of a layer 0 which is also even more difficult to explain, right? But if we know, like, we're talking to developer, then you're like, yeah, you know what, you don't have to think about Polkadot, you don't have to think about how it works. Just, we have EVM and WASM, you know, and if you want to, you can get supporters, you get community members to support your project. And we're like, we don't have validators. And if people ask you, like, whoa, how did you actually manage to do these stuff? It looks like magic. Are you guys like really centralized? And we'll be like, hey, that's the point there, buddy. So we're actually decentralized because Polkadot guarantees this stuff. And they're like, oh, Polkadot, you guys are a parachain of Polkadot. What's a Polkadot? And then we can further go on with that conversation. So I guess it's more like, for me nowadays, I'm starting to sort of change my mindset, and don't think start as a parachain first, but as a blockchain, as a decentralized platform first and foremost. And then once people ask you, how did you manage to do this without going full on Solana? Well, we tell you we have Polkadot.
Yeah, I would just support this point. I think it's based on the maturity of the parachain, right? How mature the parachain is and your project in general, if you can already go to like user adoption. I mean, I do growth for Fala Network as well, and we provide a decentralized computation cloud. And this is very easy to grasp if you compare it to AWS or GCP and so on. And we started to pitch also about our cloud, right? Before we then say, oh, it's actually based on Polkadot. So I really want to support this point that we should go there also as a parachain, right? Because in the end, it's like we need the user adoption, and Polkadot, the customers of Polkadot are then the parachains. So it should not be our job to educate about it, but of course we love to talk about it, and it always depends on the stage the parachain is in.
Often when people approach me about Polkadot in particular, I look for what I think will be the most inspiring content to send them to. So sometimes this is interview videos with Gavin, or maybe the wiki or whatever. And then I'm very much a people person. I love to have conversations. So at that point, I just keep the communication open, and I sort of let them guide me towards what they're truly interested in, and then continue to help like facilitating the education further, and just help them find exactly what they're looking for within the ecosystem, because more often than not, it does exist. And so we're able to find it. And if it doesn't, then that's another exciting topic in itself, right? So, yeah.
Right, so from this discussion, so I can acknowledge that right now we have stuff, but there's no something that we can easily like share to people. Just like, okay, you have this resource, you look at it, now you understand what the philosophy of Polkadot is, right? So Polkadot as a chain, and then there are parachains on top of it, and like you mentioned it very well, the clients of Polkadot are parachain teams. So that brings to the next discussion on so forget about the end user of Polkadot in terms of like retail, like someone who's just buying tokens and then who wants to stake or do stuff. So mainly it's about like the enterprise or like there's a killer use case out there for blockchain which is yet to be explored, and Polkadot and Substrate are going to enable that killer use case to actually come to fruition, right? So there are all these big ideas about like blockchain, what it can do, and if you fundamentally look at the blockchains that are out there that can actually support such kind of technology, it's easy for a developer or someone with computer science background like me, looking at the code repositories, looking at Substrate, seeing every day it's being improved, the whole concept of runtime upgrades where you release your code at some basic level, and you're able to upgrade it as you sort of improve without like splitting your community. All of these are like awesome ideas which are actually being implemented. And so now the developers can easily acknowledge it if we actually present that content to them, right? So that's where I sort of am very involved in. So I'm from academia. So I believe in the power of like, students in general. Like, the student communities are great. I'm sure you as head ambassador also know that a lot of students have that potential. you present the idea, you present the vision, and then they just gather resources to make things happen. So what I believe in is sort of creating an introductory course on Polkadot. It need not be like a long semester course. It could be something short, just like a course that you would see on Coursera or edX, right? So if there were to be an introductory course on Polkadot, again, it's not just Polkadot and parachains. What concepts would you like to see in such course that would make your job as direct or indirect educators easy, so that you can just take off with what you want to deliver instead of covering a lot of ground there? I'll start with you. As an ambassador, I'm sure you get a lot of questions. So what kind of topics would you like to be, you'd like to see presented solidly so that you don't have to deal with those questions anymore?
Yeah, I mean, the whole architecture and concept of Polkadot. This is like, I mean, you can be very generic here because you have to break it down into a lot of different aspects, right? But like really the if you talk about Polkadot itself, of course, like all the details, in the architecture itself, but then also saying, okay, why should you then build a parachain on top of it? And also separating that every parachain has its own vision, right? Because we always talk about Polkadot as a whole. Of course, we are a community and like an ecosystem, but always trying to get also all the parachains under one hood, which is not the case because we have different verticals, right, that we build on. And I think this is important to understand what the variety that can be deployed and actually developed on Polkadot. But really, if it's only about Polkadot itself, really going into the architecture and what benefit it brings to the parachains. In the wiki, we have an area where we even talk about comparisons, right, to ETH.2 and Cosmos, and I think that's very valuable because a lot of people ask about the comparison to Cosmos.
I was just asked in the booth.
Yeah, so you know about this, and it is a very valid question because, I mean, we carry the same vision, right, but fundamentally, actually Cosmos and Polkadot are completely set up in the opposite way, right? And I think this is very important to also cover in such course, to why Polkadot was created, how it was created, and then comparing it. So to really put out the unique selling point for the parachains to launch on.
Thank you.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree with what Zoe said. Like, I can't, probably I'll parrot some parts, but just to add my part onto it, I would say definitely like the comparison with the Cosmos is important. Everyone asks that, how does IBC and XCM differ? Of course, we always have those different aspects to it, like how the fee system works when you're making such transactions. And in Cosmos, I believe you have to have your own validators if you want to create your own blockchain. So IBC itself is sort of an actual kind of an intermediary bridge, while there is no guaranteed share security. Now, having said that, Cosmos is actually working on that. So now the comparison is even more hard to make. Well, I mean, technically there is, but for the general audience, like if Cosmos offers share security, then what else does Polkadot offer? But yeah, on top of that, in terms of substrate and making a parachain, so I would say clearly defining what's the difference between how a smart contract or dApp works versus how palettes or runtime logic works. So I think Substrate.io, the Substrate docs did a good job in explaining how it works. With smart contracts, you're working in a secure sandbox environment. You have limited capabilities. You cannot access native runtime hardware. You cannot access off-chain workers. You can only access whatever the network is providing you. Well, with pallets, sky is the limit, really. If you want to break your network, break it. No one's gonna stop you from it. And that's what, yeah, I guess like it's trying to explain that to someone who understands how blockchain works but doesn't understand how Substrate works could be helpful. So.
Yeah, I'll just add on top of like what you just mentioned, as some of you are aware, or most of you are aware, there's a Polkadot Blockchain Academy running, this whole month. Yeah, right now. There are over like 50 blockchain engineers or future blockchain engineers sitting and listening to lectures all day. They have dorms in like Cambridge University, and then they're actually learning what you just mentioned. So I would say, we are one of the first, blockchain ecosystems to be doing such a dedicated school. So for me, as a technical educator, that content is a treasure chest. So what I would have spent like an entire year, trying to collect all that information on my own, because all of you do like awesome job. You all develop stuff, and to get your time to educate, about the stuff that you do is actually like chopping off a lot of productive time that you'll have as a developers. Yeah. I can see that when we ask, some of the very top-notch developers to deliver something in the education front, they always like struggle because it's tough to sort of balance their time in doing it. So for me, it's like a treasure chest. I'm very happy to share that treasure, by summarizing all of it into like a presentable content for. So we're talking about different audience here. So the technical audience are the developers who are already familiar with all the programming languages, how things work, and they just want to understand the how blockchain works. How do you write code that is tailored for blockchain? So that'll be like a very focused resource for the developers. And again, like we're all talking about like different audience here. So I just wanted to share that update that even that is being sort of covered by our ecosystem. Trying to sort of educate developers that are out there, showing them like how Substrate works, and sort of increase the overall projects in the ecosystem.
Yeah, and this is like such a pressing matter that Sean and Gavin had to fly to London to the Cambridge just teach everyone.
I just want to add to what you just said on Substrate and looking into the developer, audience. I think since, if you talk to students and they are interested about blockchain, they have heard about Bitcoin and Ethereum, right? And they know about Solidity. They at least played around with it. So I think we are really at a stage where we can compare things, right? And by comparing things, you can actually show off how good you are. So you can show and compare Substrate and pellets and so on with other tools out there. Of course, not in the way because it is not the same, but at least find a comparison so people can understand what it actually does. Because I think this is what we are not doing too much in the Polkadot ecosystem. We always say, even parachains building so cool stuff, but it's very difficult to imagine for people what it actually is because it is not possible on another chain, right? It's only possible on Polkadot itself. So by finding comparison, people at least understand what you're doing, and then you drop the ball and say, okay, but it's only possible because we build on Polkadot using Substrate, right? The power of pellets. This is maybe something to include and just to get people, a little bit, get them to understand a little bit better.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, I want to go a little bit further on that, and it's something that I would like to see available for new people entering the ecosystem is sort of a call to action, but most importantly, a unified message. And it's, we're all building something that is much, much greater than us or even a single team. And we're creating an ecosystem that's, unstoppable, decentralized, all the buzzwords. But I find it's a lot of times when new people are entering the ecosystem, they're getting blasted with all of these different opinions. And like you were saying, it has to start somewhere and go to the next place. And I think it's really hammering down on a unified call to action to be able to present to new people entering the ecosystem will help to really bring the inspiration to really try to be a part of something that's greater than yourself.
And to come to your question, what would you add to the course? I think one thing, and that's what we are currently already forgotten, what about Kusama? That's like, when people are coming, you always tell about, we also have a canary network, Kusama, Shardin, Moonriver, so many. What are those compared to those on Polkadot? And I think this makes it another level of confusion as well. So I think, especially when you are making a course, do not forget about that Kusama education part.
That's in the first module of the course.
That needs to
That's
be
guaranteed.
Then they know, okay, let's go to the canary first and then go there. Another thing that you can add as well is the governance, of course. Yeah.
But I thought Kusama was a testnet for rich people.
Yeah, I think governance is a very important topic. Again, I loved your talk about it, Hoon. I think I mentioned it already 3 times throughout the last days, really comparing the governance model again to other governance models and why it is slightly centralized in Polkadot. Of course, will be changed with also the governance 2.0, but really showing the power that we have, you know, as a token holder. And even joining councils, right? Like, I think this is something that actually the parachains learn. I mean, there are a lot of things that parachains learn from Polkadot generally, but like the council setup and the governance model is something that we always orientate ourselves based on Polkadot. There's still a lot of, you know, parachains that have not launched their council or not using the treasury, but this is such a powerful tool that is very leveraged, and yeah, every parachain is actually trying to advance this as well.
I totally agree with that. Like, so if you think of like Polkadot, it's like a democracy on chain, and then a democracy as strong as its, you know, educated citizens. So having like a detailed guide on you being in, you know, so you're part of the Polkadot blockchain ecosystem, you should be aware how you can sort of propose, you know, make a proposal for treasury or for anything to sort of take the protocol to the next level. So I think that sort of education is needed. Now, if I ask in this room how many of you can create a treasury proposal or what it takes to create a treasury proposal, I don't know, but this event itself is funded by the treasury, just so you know. So it's an important aspect, but people are not very educated about it. Like, you know, so it's right now sitting with like a very niche group, which is very involved in like governance. But expanding this further is going to make like Polkadot, you know, the actual democracy blockchain that it's meant to be. So definitely I take that point as well. So I feel explaining what governance is, understanding like what your privileges are, being part of like Polkadot ecosystem is definitely going to expand.
And just that, I think, I mean, child bounties, right? The new mechanism that we have implemented. I don't know if this exists somewhere else in other governance. So, you know, again, like very difficult to explain, but very cool stuff, the child bounties that are implemented now to actually decentralize the council much more. I'm actually working on or there is a proposal that already went through the treasury, where we will hopefully become the curator of this bounty, and then can actually execute treasury fundings through child bounties, right? So this is a whole topic on itself, but this is so cool that actually with this new mechanism that was developed to include the community more, to actually take over some specific parts that they are experts in, and decentralize the council more to actually include everyone, yeah.
Okay, thank you. I have plenty of content to cover, but I think, yeah, it sort of summarizes at least what I thought are like the really important things. I think you all gave a really good you know, insight into that stuff. So I think we're close to ending like our discussion. I have a couple of questions for you, all of you. So one thing is, so we all are here. I think the event is taking place for a reason. Like, we want to build synergies, even though we're all part of like the same ecosystem. Like, most of us are like interacting with each other for the first time, like at least me. So I'd like to see like how we can build synergies, you know, just the way Polkadot, you know, builds on top of like the services from other parachains, like, you know, in terms of like composability, you don't have to reinvent everything or whatever. So we can bring that philosophy to sort of the way we work as well. So some teams, Web3 Foundation or you know, some parachain teams have strong education programs. Okay, so, and some may not have the resources to put that together. Are there ways in which, like, you know, we can form some kind of synergy where you know, so you can bank on one particular team or you know, a collection of teams to sort of collectively put a narrative or you know, educational content out there that can benefit like the whole ecosystem. So go ahead.
I guess I can start. In terms of synergy between different parachain projects, I think one clear approach that we are really focusing on right now as Oscar Network is XCM, like XCM, just connecting connecting with different parachains, and you're able to transfer assets or NFTs or any message, arbitrary message, even features seamlessly with other network is such a brilliant idea. But it's the whole point of Polkadot as well, right? And yeah, the way how we want to bring synergy is as a multi-virtual machine smart contract platform, or we like to call it the innovation hub. We want to we create a bunch of set of interfaces and chain extensions that allows developers to leverage smart contracts. Leverage XCM, compose XCM instructions directly from a smart contract to access the feature of another project, another parachain. And the way how we can definitely see like this as a way to push any parachain is that now developers can mix and match features of parachains at will. If they see a good parachain, a value proposition of a certain parachain could work well with what they have in mind, and it also requires the value proposition of another parachain, then you come to our network and build that right away. And we also have dApp staking, so you're incentivized for making those stuff if it provides value to the end users, so you don't have to rely on token sales. So to us, it's all about, I guess, condensedly summarizing and providing what is the unique value proposition of a certain parachain. Why would people? Why do people have to care about this? Why is it a game changer? And for us, that's how we want to bring everything together and create synergy in a product level, but also in a community level and in a feature level. So,
and regarding synergy, it's actually just getting started, because now with the XCM, you are now getting to talk with those projects or those parachains, because just opening up a channel, that's it, but building the use cases with that channel, that's the next step. And now you are able to talk and discuss and look for possibilities to do this. And then it will bring the use cases to new builders, to new users as well. I think we're just getting started, but now the synergy is getting as well. So I see this as well here in Paris as well as in Amsterdam. Projects are getting together, look, okay, let's do something now together. Now it's open, now we can do it, let's start. And now things are getting really fast for us now.
I largely agree with what both of you said, and I think that it's important to remember that we are just getting started, and I think that what we'll see in the future is a shift towards new teams that come into the ecosystem. They'll start building around use cases that are an identified need within the ecosystem with the plans to integrate into what is already here, right? So we're kind of laying the framework to allow new teams to come in and really build what needs to be built.
Yeah, and you asked also like where we can cooperate, right, between Polkadot and,
Yes.
and parachains. I think we can definitely support more the power of Substrate, right? Because all parachains are using Substrate, and you can also build, of course, standalone chains with Substrate. But and most of the parachains modify, right, or create their own pellets. And I think this is something where we can really cooperate more on to say, wow, this is possible with Substrate. You have all, the basic pellets and so on. But these parachains are building these type of pellets to make this possible in their specific use case, And then even like pellets being created between different parachains and projects. So this is something we should definitely promote more to show the power of Substrate itself and how easy it is to build it, and then again getting the traction of building more parachains. Only 100, but.
Yeah, so that's one more thing we want to educate on. 100 is like the hypothetical number. So when the demand rises, the devs are gonna do their work to scale it further. Yeah, so I think let's have some closing thoughts on the theme of the panel discussion, which is scaling Polkadot education, right? So what comes to your mind when you hear that theme, and then just bounce off a couple of ideas that we can take from today's panel and sort of reflect in probably next year's ParisDOT. So go ahead in this order. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, scaling Polkadot education for me is really going outside the Polkadot box, right? Because we all are very familiar, very passionate about Polkadot. We explain it so often, but scaling it is really to go out, to go to a Solana Hacker House, to go to a near event, Cosmos event, even, and like learning from their side, of course, but also showing them what we are doing by finding the conversation. Because in the end, we are all in the Web3 space, and everyone is pretty open to learn, right? And to have conversations. And of course, there's competition in between the ecosystems and so on. But if you find a good conversation with the people and they're open up, and I had this kind of conversation in the Solana Hacker House actually, and they were like, oh, this is interesting, because they don't do the research by themselves because we are all in our own bubble. And I think this will help us. Again, we are early, we are now focusing on XCM in our ecosystem, we want to communicate with each other, but this is really what will help us to go out to the other ecosystems, talk with them, and find a comparison again. I found this use case very interesting between IBC and XCM, and I really see the power in XCM also to be an outgoing, channel outside of the Polkadot ecosystem, although it was built different than IBC, but it's really, finding these type of conversations, again, compare things or try to compare it, and then really show the uniqueness of our architecture, all the tools that we are building, and why you should join Polkadot.
Very good.
Yeah, I guess for me, I'll actually go to the other different approach. So scaling knowledge in this ecosystem is when we can have a layer of abstraction, and also when we can just say it works and people can still use it. So like, for example, when back in the old days, if you wanted to make a website, you had to learn HTML, CSS, you have to understand how servers work, domains. Now, you don't even need to know any of those acronyms I mentioned and still make a pretty good website. And it just works, right? Although there's a lot of trust involved in Web 2, but with Web 3 and what we are building right now, all of us together, and a lot of people in this room as well who are aspiring to make it, I feel like if we can just say it works for something that is permissionless, that is trustless, then that would be a true revolution for sure. And we want to go there. We don't want to have Polkadot or Parity or Web3 do everything for us, but when parachains can be self-sufficient in their own education and just provide that abstraction. You don't even have to mention about XCM. Just say like, load this address from this contract, use these parameters, and boom, you just use the feature from another parachain, but you don't even know about it, and it works, just works. And that's what I would say is true scaling.
Yeah, I agree totally with what Zoe was saying. Getting out there to the new users who are not coming here to this venue, who are actually like on the other side. Why not put a shadow at that event and be there as Polkadot, but all parachains as well. And when people come in and you say, no, but go to that booth, those guys are doing that on Polkadot. And then you can educate and see the power, what's possible with Polkadot. And it would be great that we can go out with Polkadot and all the parachains together, and not everybody a single booth, but like a big thing inside a big venue where others are as well. Then people can really be educated about Polkadot and compare as well at the same time to others. But not again, I do like this kind of event because it's like coming home to a family. So then it's like really nice as well, so yeah.
Yeah, so going further along that point, actually, and also remembering that, we're still early or whatever, I think it's consistency in events like this will actually be very productive in allowing for us to have more reach to other people. Right now, it's very scrappy. It's, the question is, are you going to go to ParisDOT, right? Whereas when you think of FCC, the question is, are you going to FCC this year, right? Everybody knows where it's at. Everybody knows that it's going to be there. And I imagined when it started, it was very similar to what we see here today, right? And so establish that consistency, and that will allow us to scale in a way that will be very meaningful.
Yeah, thank you very much. Are we taking questions from audience, or does anybody have anything to ask?
Sorry.
Yeah, this was very insightful. I'm very glad we had this
Hello?
discussion.
Oh, sorry.
yeah,
Yeah, I had a question. Really insightful. To what extent do you think it's important to start scaling the Polkadot and just the Web3 education in general to the younger generations?
And get them in younger, you mean like just, you know,
Yeah, like grade school and
teach them, yeah,
stuff.
teach them about how cryptocurrencies work to like a 12-year-old. To a younger audience. That's a good question, actually, because I mean, yeah, of course, like at some point you have to explain how this kind of thing works. I'm explaining in a weird way right now, but I would say we're too early at the moment. I don't know, like when I was in grade school, I didn't learn anything about programming at the time. Just had to do it myself. But I know nowadays programming is like part of the curriculum. For Web3 though, I guess blockchain technology as a whole, there's so many aspects to it. Are you going to teach them trading? I mean, I wouldn't want to. No. Yeah. Do you want to teach them how to YOLO your life away, or do you want to teach them how decentralized system works? Yeah, it's really hard to say.
Yeah, I think I can take. I mean, I can give my insight about this one. So a lot of what the vision of Polkadot, I mean, it's centered about like what Web3 should be. So Web3, so anybody who's introduced to like internet, you know, the way it works. So at that level, you could also say, you know, there is this new paradigm of how internet can work. That can be in school, you know, at the university level, I definitely feel like there should be a dedicated course exploring like blockchain and all of the ecosystems out there. Yeah, so depends. Like you can always, I mean, we have social studies as part of school, right? So we learn about democracy and you know different ways like countries work, and now there exist like these blockchain nation states, which are like these this new wave of like reorganizing people across the globe. So it's interesting. You can put the concepts from what we're doing at different levels. You know, you don't have to teach them about relay chain and parachain in schools, but definitely the philosophy itself can be delivered.
Yeah. But even Polkadot itself, I think, should be then included. So I'm a big promoter of like educating students, like the youngest people, you know, because it's very obvious that they get very excited about it, and you can still like, you know, create this, develop a skill set with them together. And we do this actually at, I mean, I as an ambassador for Polkadot, but also with Fala Network, actually cooperating with universities and giving these kind of like workshops, and then even hiring interns that work on projects, right, with us through these introduction courses that we provide. And I love introducing Polkadot and really going into Polkadot directly, because you can always, again, most of them have heard about Bitcoin and Ethereum. Maybe if they're not a developer, they have not played around with it, but they heard about it, you know, and they can somehow understand it. And Polkadot's very good to compare them, because about the interoperability part, right? We always explain like you have several internets, right? And Polkadot actually connects it like this. And I think this is, once you just say, okay, there's Bitcoin, Ethereum, and you don't go either like much more deeper into it, and then really dive into Polkadot, you can actually fascinate them a lot with it. So they do their own research maybe in the end itself and understand it, how special it is.
I guess I actually want to add one more thing too. So the general perception by the public of blockchain, they always associate it with crypto. It's always about the gains that they think about, and unless we can sort of separate that perception, tell them what's the difference. If people can acknowledge the difference between a decentralized platform versus cryptocurrency or storage of value, then I think we might actually have something interesting to say to the general public, to a younger audience, for sure.
I think that it's important not to contextualize it as the younger audience, but more so as the next generation of what is going to be coming into. Yeah, and yeah, I mean, in my opinion, the next generation will probably be better than us, and the generation after that will probably be better than them. And then furthermore,
we hope.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Furthermore, I think that it is a really good idea to leverage into universities and really tap into people that are in a mindset of learning already, and really try to satiate their interest in learning something new, right? So yeah.
Yeah, and I think it will be really like implemented into, at least like the Web3 mindset and like even like blockchain technology into these courses, because I mean all of us when we meet each other and then talk about like our careers, or it's always the question, what did you do before entering the space? What did you do before blockchain or crypto? And I'm very convinced at one point there's this question. I mean, you don't ask this question anymore, because people study it, people learn about it in school, and they directly start their IT career, right? Or they directly start to study, I don't know, physics or so on. So it's really like that we integrate it more and more into the educational part, and then have like all the blockchain developers and educators around us.
Yeah, like since Bobby mentioned like contextualizing as a next generation, being part of a curriculum for like a higher education as well. Actually, that does put things into a different light, because I was thinking of like a literal child learning about it, which I was like, yeah, I mean, why would you like?
Danger zone.
Yeah. But that's true. Like now, imagine if there is. I know a lot of courses do talk about blockchains nowadays. It's like you cannot separate them anymore, and so like what Zoe said as well. We assume that whoever did blockchain before had another profession. Although for me, it's kind of interesting because my first ever job, full-time job, is at Costar. Yeah, so like and my first ever Rust project was also Substrate. So I'm like I like to consider myself a Web3 native, in a sense. So yeah, so it's
You're the poster child of, Substrate and Polkadot.
actually, yeah, maybe, maybe.
Any other questions for the panel? Or something that you would like to see in a Polkadot course? Oh, there's a hand up there.
Hello. What I would love to see is like a lot of entertainment. Like if you learn something, the most difficult thing is to keep focus. So things have to be fun, especially if you come from the Solidity thing. I did a course 4 years ago. It was the most boring course ever. It was hard to understand because it was a hard dialect. And now the courses which are now available, they are fun, they're energetic. It's like, yeah, you're now of a new age of revolution. Feels cool, but the information is the same. So yeah, really the feeling is important as well, not just the information, especially for learning. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point. So entertainment is one thing, but so having the experience of developing like a MOOC, like an online course that runs on itself, there is research on how much attention span a learner can have when they're like learning new stuff, like Polkadot technology, Rust, or Substrate. Actually, that attention span is diminishing like every year in the research studies. So the videos now, the ideal time for every single video is about like 3 to 4 minutes. So you have to package your concept. Like let's say I'm talking about Kusama. I can't talk more than 4 minutes in that video, but that 4 minutes should be concise enough that covers like every single important point about like Kusama. So definitely we'll bring in like all that research into like how learning can be facilitated in such a course. But yeah, so definitely they should have some entertaining content in them as well. I'm not good with jokes, but I can like sort of hire people who can like create these animations or jokes in there. But yeah, so point taken. Like so making sure the courses are not boring. They're very concise and they deliver like what they're supposed to deliver.
I think I could sort of rephrase that question. So instead of being entertaining, or I mean, definitely important, but also I guess you can rephrase it as engaging. how could you
Yes,
make a project
learner
engaging,
engagement,
right? Yeah, and with Ethereum, a lot of Solidity projects are engaging because you have crypto zombies, you have crypto kitties, you have, and even Substrate.
Substrate.
Yeah, early years. That's how actually I learned Substrate is through through the CryptoKitty the palette. Yeah, it's fun because you see things moving, you see things actually happening as you go, and everyone loves games, everyone loves visual stuff, right? And I think blockchain has the least visual stuff in any development. Even with servers, you can render hello world, but with blockchain, what are you gonna do? Like, make a token named hello and another token named world. So it's, yeah, like, I do think we will definitely benefit from having those, but that is also something that will definitely be improved as time goes and as more people with different perspective joins in this ecosystem, develop something that's just stupidly fun. Like imagine a blockchain with that's all about saying good morning and good night, which is, which yeah, GM or die.
I think we have a parachain that's running for an auction.
Oh
the
yes,
GM.
yeah,
Yes,
GM or die.
it is.
Yes.
Yeah, you can check that out on Polkadot.js right now. Then. Cool. It's been a great discussion. I'd like to end it here. I think we have break now, have coffee, and then be ready for these sessions like later on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good, yeah, I even followed it. If you guys, Elizabeth Reader. Thank you. All right, thank you very much to all of our panelists. Yeah, it was very interesting, actually. Even I could follow it, so I'm pretty happy I could follow one talk in the entire event. So we'll have a break for something around 20 minutes. And yeah, just after we will have 3 talks remaining here, and then from 6 p.m. will be the final party at the top room. So please, from 6 p.m. feel free to jump by the top room for a little speech and a great cocktail. Thank you, everyone. All right, welcome back everyone, and thanks again for being there for the last part. So for our next speaker, we have Gillian from BitGreen.
Hey guys, I gotta find a clicker. All right. Wow, I can't believe you guys lasted this long. First of all, thank you for staying this long, and anyone in the interwebs listening. And thank you to HydroDex and Astro and everyone else who put this event together. This is very exciting. My name is Gilad Goren. I am one of the co-founders and also the head of partnerships at BitGreen. And we are a project that will soon be a parachain, proud members of the .comm universe. And as you all well know, in an ecosystem where every parachain is meant to have its purpose, our purpose is, well, its purpose. We seek to be the hub for impact and sustainability for the entire .comm universe, and in turn help Polkadot be the center of gravity for impact in the entire world of Web3. We firmly believe that this is a revolutionary technology that could scale the impact and really get us to a place and a world that in our hearts we know is possible. So a bit of backdrop. I'm not going to go into all these because they're pretty depressing, but we have a set of intercorrelated challenges. Let's call it challenges. It's a nice euphemism that we all collectively face, right? Migration, scarcity of food, the big C word, climate change. And they're pretty daunting. However, if you just flip the script, these are actually our bags, our big, hairy, audacious goals. They represent an opportunity that has pretty much a limitless TAM, or a total addressable market. The opportunity is massive. It's in the trillions, and it's for us to take. And our moon mission is to stop this. It's a pretty sad picture. So what's carbon got to do with it? And that's kind of the point of this conversation that we're having. Well, I am not a scientist, so I'm not going to be able to drop a lot of knowledge on proving that climate change is a man-made situation. There are far more better suited people who would do this in a heartbeat. But I'll just give a little context. It turns out that there's almost an exact correlation between the amount of greenhouse gas emissions that have been emitted since the dawn of the Industrial Revolution, so early 19th century, beginning, or late 18th century, and the rise in temperatures. As you can see, there's been a cycle for millennia, and then suddenly, boom, hockey stick, and not the kind of hockey stick we want to see. It's not mass adoption, this is rising temperatures. So, what does that mean? Well, a rise in temperatures, aka global warming, leads to a destabilization of the ecosystems that govern the way we all live. And by all of us, I mean like all species, all living essences. In other words, global warming leads to climate change. And frankly, the way we are thinking about it, it's kind of all wrong. Because, first of all, climate change is not just a problem in silo. Those challenges I showed before, they're all interconnected. Climate change exacerbates tensions between peoples over less and less water and less harvest, which leads to wars. We've already had water wars in the world. Climate change disproportionately affects people of color and women. Kids who normally go to school are forced to go to work. Overexploitation of habitats, all those evil things. So they're all interconnected. And we're talking about reducing, right? Mitigating. Let's drive less. Let's do less industrialization. Unfortunately, we're past that point. We actually actively need to take carbon from the atmosphere. And that is carbon removal, that is expensive, that is necessary. It's also in the gigatons, like billions of tons. And I've been to a few different conferences focusing on this space, and unfortunately, people are often talking about millions of tons, right? There are currently a couple dozen millions of tons in the Web3 world, tokenized carbon credits. A lot of projects out there, and we'll talk about one of them, reaches eventually millions of tons of credits. We need gigatons. It's frankly maybe paralyzing to some people. That number of 50 trillion, that's what researchers say is the amount of money we need to basically pay to stop it. In other words, this is the funding gap. And some actually say that it's twice the amount post-COVID. That is a paralyzing number, right? That's much bigger than, I'm not even sure that's the market cap anymore for crypto and DeFi, but it's much bigger than this. It's going to be weird for you guys to hear this. I actually think that's exhilarating. And I know it's weird, but the reason I think this is exhilarating is because we have a North Star. We have a target. We need to hit 50 trillion to fill in this funding gap. And what's comforting is that the world has more than enough of that money available. Recently, I was listening to a podcast from The Economist, and they're talking about how there's $35 trillion already being screened among asset managers for ESG. You hear about trillions of dollars that are just waiting to be invested. So there is clearly enough supply of capital. And there's also enough incredible projects and initiatives and talent to present the demand for capital. So there's enough of both sides. So what's the challenge? They don't meet one another. The rails connecting between demand and supply for capital just aren't there. They're not proper. There isn't an efficient way to discover opportunities and invest in them. And that's where BitGreen steps in. So basically, BitGreen is a parachain on top of which are being built initiatives, projects, and different opportunities to connect between the demand for capital, i.e. the projects that do the carbon sequestration, that deal with social impact, those kind of projects, and the supply capital, investors. And investors could be massive institutions. It could be individuals like you and I. This is the opportunity of a lifetime. And of those $50 to $100 trillion, BitGreen is dedicated to having one of those trillions be moved through our rails and through Polkadot. So I'm going to be focusing mostly on that first one, commodity markets, carbon. However, just to give you guys a primer of our overall 101. So I mentioned we're building the parachain, on top of which there's going to be some really interesting tokenomics models that are focused, kind of built around carbon. I won't get into the details of that, but stay tuned. We'll be making announcements about that. And in order to actually seed the ecosystem, to get projects to build on us, and we also have a surprise announcement about that coming up in a bit, we are actually building our own applications as well. So layer 1 to layer 3. The first application is a compliant crowdfunding marketplace for impact investing with a focus on debt. Debt is a $400 trillion industry. And in the world of impact investing, the majority is done in debt. So what does debt actually mean? It means being able to fund a hydropower plant or solar array. It means being able to give more comfortable terms to companies that are doing an incredible job in microfinance or other forms of triple bottom line initiatives, but are looking for more mission-aligned money. They don't want to sell their soul to hedge funds. They want to work with individuals who are looking for a return. Triple bottom line, by the way, is a return in terms of your money, but also social impact and environmental sustainability. So the current sector of impact investing is about $1 trillion. Nice, but again, we have a $50 trillion funding gap. With this marketplace and other initiatives we'll build around it, our goal is to democratize it, allow anyone to be able to invest with their hearts. So an individual like you or I, to other entities, the people that don't usually get access to this. Imagine getting yields on real-world assets with a real-world impact. The second application is in the world of ecosystem service credits. That's your carbon credits, your biodiversity credits, plastic credits. I'll get into the details later on in the conversation, just suffice to say, again, marketplace mechanism, we think that's a very strong way of transferring cash or fiat or stablecoins from those that have the cash or fiat or stablecoins to those that need it. And we are going to be building a marketplace, which we'll be launching soon, that allows for the developers, the suppliers, the people who are doing the work, to easily tell their story. They'll tell the story through videos and text. They'll tell their story through showing you the plots of the land, and in real time you'll be able to see the land. And for individuals or any entities to purchase and support them. The last bit is philanthropy. Also a massive and important part of the impact space. Fairly early for us, I won't bore you with the details yet. That's more of a 2023 thing. All right, carbon credits. Interesting. Does anyone know what carbon credits are? Show of hands. Anyone ever heard of the term carbon credits before? Okay. It's kind of a finicky term because it's not exactly a commodity, right? You can't fuel your car with carbon credits or feed your family. It's not a security. It's not meant to be a security, at least, right? You don't buy it to hold and then earn money on it. You're meant to retire it, though some people do buy it to hold and earn money on it. And it's not necessarily philanthropy, though it is a transfer of wealth from those that have to those that need, because it's somewhat compliant. There are areas where you have to buy carbon credits to a certain extent. Carbon credits were originally created as part of a larger economic mechanism to try to decarbonize the world. In other words, there was meant to be a global mandate where all entities, companies, countries basically have a cap of emissions per year or per a certain period of time. Once they pass the cap, they pay a tax. So the stick here is these carbon credits. They would pay to offset the emissions that they create. The money for the credits would go to projects who do the hard work of sequestering carbon, of protecting forests. Essentially, it kind of equals out that way. However, what ended up happening is the mandate never happened. And so we have a bit of a broken archipelago. We have some areas that have a compliant marketplace. This is like in Europe, California, and some big numbers, and it works quite well. And then we have the voluntary carbon marketplace. This is where companies or entities essentially volunteer to offset their credit, whether they do it for truly altruistic purposes or to look good in front of customers. It's where the Amazons, the Microsofts, the Shopifys really shine. And it's a nascent but very much a growing industry. But ultimately, the purpose of these credits is to do just that. The idea is it's basically to incentivize you to decarbonize, because the value of the credits will go up. You get basically another push to think about what you're doing, maybe travel less, maybe update your technology, et cetera, et cetera. So what's the problem? Well, I mentioned the fact that we're probably never going to have a global mandate. That's sort of, at this point, the story, or the worth for science fiction. But aside from that, carbon is a sector that is really slow. It's low tech. It's a marketplace that's opaque. There isn't really price transparency. A lot of the deals being done between the producers and the buyers is sort of through brokers. So a lot of the money goes to middlemen. You could have one deal for this project with one broker, and it will cost you X, and then another broker will give you X plus Y. Not the right setting to build a trustful and efficient marketplace. So, interesting. Don't you love it when the slides get mixed up midway? What is Big Green Solution? Our work certainly is basically couched in 3 pillars when it comes to carbon. The first pillar is the marketplace that I mentioned. It's combining the best of Web 2 in terms of e-commerce, the ability to really have a user experience that people get. Like I said, it's the opportunity for a project developer to tell their story. Now, a carbon credit isn't just about sequestering carbon. It's also about direct benefits to biodiversity. It's growing the species, the amount and the diversity of species. It could be about supporting frontline indigenous communities. So this is an opportunity to tell the story. It's also an opportunity to use the best that Web3 offers, which is a transparent audit trail. So you can see how the project develops in real time. You feel more comfortable that it isn't a bunch of BS. And also, it's an opportunity to really see price transparency. In our marketplace, unlike amongst brokers, the prices are out there in the open. There's a historic, and there's projections as well. And on top of it, you know how much we're going to take. There's going to be a uniform fee that is irrespective of the type of project or the specific project itself. It's out in the open, and it's basically a network fee, the funds of which will go back to the network itself, and also for a little buffer for security. And that will be in full detail in front of everyone as this launches. Aside from the marketplace for the sales and distribution, one of the main pain points that developers have is, God, it's really expensive to originate a project. If you're building a meaningful project, and what I mean by meaningful is like in terms of size and impact, it will take you years, and it will cost millions of dollars. Often, those on the front lines don't have either. What Bitgreen is able to do is through innovative financial tools, like green bonds, the debt marketplace, and this concept known as forward contracts, which is essentially the ability to buy future credits at a discount. We're able to enable the project developers to kind of exit part of their money that was invested much earlier on, so they could then recycle it into new projects, thereby scaling the supply. Cool. What's happening right now is that there's growing demand for credits. There's not enough supply. Partially because of the low-tech nature of the sector, but partially because there's not that money that supposedly stands there, that wall of money, as some people call it, is not reaching the guys who are on the ground. And the third piece of the puzzle is what's called DMRV. DMRV stands for Digital Monitoring, Reporting, Verification. That's the brass tacks of actually creating the credit, measuring the baseline. So where are we right now? And what are the plans for improving or for maintaining, right? Doing the verification, making sure that what's happening is actually real, sending the applications, all that good stuff. Currently, it's done through Excel spreadsheets, boots on the ground, PDFs, 600-page PDFs that you can't really index and start looking through. With DMRV, we're talking about use of satellites and AI. We're talking about remote sensing with IoT, with drones, all the kind of fourth industrial technological innovation that we know is obvious and should be there. I'm glad to say that the industry is coming around to it. And the role that Web3 could play here is to be the connective tissue, connecting between all the inputs from machines and humans in a very transparent audit trail in order to give that layer of transparency, so that investors would come in, look at it, be like, okay, this is legit, and I could keep track. Okay, I'm more comfortable to invest at the early stage of a project, or just generally to have it for posterity's sake. By the way, one thing that I forgot to mention, when we spoke earlier about global warming and climate change, I mentioned I'm not a scientist, clearly. I'm walking on a stage barefoot talking about crypto. But I think all of us are viscerally aware of the impact of climate change, right? We've all heard stories from all 7 continents. That's nice. I come from a country, currently, I just traveled from a country I recently moved to, that is experiencing unprecedented fires and the hottest summers they can ever imagine, and they're not suited for it. They don't have any air conditioners and all that. I grew up in a country that is suffering from incredible racial tensions and fires, and has about 40 harvests left. And this used to be the breadbasket, one of the breadbaskets of the world. I was born in a country that has endemic, semi-warring states, but is increasingly feeling the pressure of regional migration from other countries who, frankly, just don't have water. You may be able to guess what countries I'm talking about, or you're probably plugging in where you're from, or the stories you've heard, because those are not novel stories. We all are feeling it. So that sense of urgency that you may be feeling in your bones, or it's already made it up over here, that's what we're trying to work on, and that's why we would love your help with. Okay, so let's get real. I'm gonna move beyond just theory and blah, 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 and talk about a real use case. So in the Ucayali region of Peru, which is in the Amazon, it's on the eastern part, there is a tract of about 2.5 million hectares of pristine Amazonian rainforest. For context, that's about Paris times 238. It's that big. That land has been stewarded by an indigenous community for generations. Now, aside from being stewards of a part of our Earth's lungs, they are also keepers of just an incredible treasure trove of Amazonian spirituality, plant medicine. It's a name that's well known in those circles. However, their work is in this present system an externality that's not accounted for. They're not rewarded for it. In fact, many of them live far below the poverty line, and as we speak, are constantly under threat, both them and the ecosystem that they are protecting, by illegal loggers, palm oil companies with abhorrent human rights records, narco traffickers, and that's on a daily basis. So, enter a concept called RED+. RED+ stands for Reducing Emissions from Avoided Deforestation and Degradation. And plus is on account of the co-benefits that I mentioned. It is a mechanism that was created under the auspices of the UN, and it allows for these sort of communities to be rewarded for their work, ongoing work. We were fortunate enough to have a representative of this indigenous community reach out to us for our help. And so what does BitGreen do in this case, right? After all, we are a Web3 company. So it starts by connecting the dots between the community and mission-aligned project developers who understand the, unfortunately, novel, but pretty incredible concept of an indigenous-led RED+ project. I know it sounds like it should be happening all the time. It just doesn't. A lot of the projects end up paying the communities on the front lines pittances compared to a project like this, which will be a $1 billion+ project. And with this type of project, they're going to be earning the majority of the funds, which they deserve. Okay, so what else are we doing? Aside from making the connections and helping originate the project itself, it is going to be on our chain where that audit trail that I mentioned is going to be happening. From the raw inputs to the original documentations all the way through, you will have a clear and transparent record of how the project is taking shape. Funding, right? The forward contract is happening. Debt is going to be in use as well. We are facilitating the ability for any one of you, if you guys want, to get involved in this project. And then once those credits are issued, which will take 2 to 3 years, because that's how long it presently takes, those credits will be available to the masses on our marketplace. So that's just a very small example of a pilot project that we also think is our flagship project, or one of them, because we're just super stoked about it. And we have a bunch of other projects of this kind already coming up. So that's real-world impact done by a Web3 company. Okay, so what else? Well, I did mention that we believe that Polkadot is uniquely suited to be an impact hub for all of Web3. One of the ways we're going to do it is by bringing other projects around the Web3 world to build on DOT. Some of you may have heard of this firm, this project called Flow Carbon. Recently, we're in the news a lot. They're well capitalized, and they're doing incredible work of tokenizing carbon credits. They will be partnering with us, bringing their credits, putting it in our marketplace, making it available for the world, and also using our debt marketplace to raise additional capital for these projects, and a slew of other strategic partnerships. They're the first of many that are going to come on DOT. Getting to DOT. We're here to make DOT the epicenter of decentralized sustainability. Some of you may have been in Berlin, or New York, or Shanghai, or Buenos Aires for Decoded. My co-founder and the CEO, Adam, made the announcement with our friends at Sequester, a public good parachain, that we will put together an initiative backed by the Web3 Foundation to enable the entire .sama universe to automatically, through basically a module that collects a portion of transaction fees, offset their presence, and invest in impact projects. And this is my opportunity to shout out these amazing teams who already signed up, my opportunity to invite everyone else to join us, because this is truly an ecosystem-wide opportunity to make a statement. This will allow us to be climate positive and get us set up for the other initiatives that are possible. Because this is our project, our mission, and we think you guys should join us, and we could co-own this. So if you are excited and you have an idea, you're a project, you're a fellow parachain, you're anyone who wants to build, reach out to me, please. If you don't have an idea, I got you. Here's a whole list of ideas that we could build together on DOT, some of which we're actually already building, many of which we just want to see happen. And we will help you do this if this is what you want to do. There's a world of opportunities here. It really is. And we're here to actualize on the potential that this technology and this community has for impact at scale. So with this, I'll say thank you to everyone in the room, everyone in the interwebs, and the teams who put this together. And yeah, catch me outside. Thank you. I guess I got a ticker going down with like 5 minutes. Yeah, if anyone has a question or wants to say hi, give it shouts, recommendations of stuff to do in Paris. Who's got? Oh.
No question?
I knocked him dead.
No.
Okay. All right, thanks guys.
That was so clear. Thank you very much.
For our second to last speaker, please welcome Jacob from Turn.
Hello. Ooh, hello, everyone. What I'm going to be discussing today is how to set cross-chain standards in a way to actually bring this reality that we know is inevitably coming of a cross-chain blockchain ecosystem forward more. My name is Jacob, and I'm Chief Strategy Officer at Turn. So for those who don't know about Turn, Turn is a smart contract hosting protocol that allows for cross-chain execution. What's unique about Turn is that we have this fail-proof mechanism built into the protocol itself. What that means is that should a transaction fail at any point during a cross-chain execution, we can revert back the effects that had happened up until that point. So the way of thinking about it would be when we're talking about a single ledger system, for example, on Ethereum, if you're executing a multi-step transaction, if you run out of gas at some point, you know that everything's going to get reverted back and the side effects won't be written down. We're matching that and moving that essentially across into the cross-chain realm. What this allows for is essentially composable execution in a cross-chain environment where transactions can compose from one another and allow for more complex functionalities in a cross-chain realm. So, for example, you'll be able to remove liquidity on Ethereum, send those tokens over to Polkadot, do a token swap on Polkadot, say get Glimmer, and then deposit that into a liquidity pool on Moonbeam. And you can do that knowing that this four-step transaction, if something fails at point 3, everything gets reverted back that's happened up until that point. Essentially, how we view it is that this is what DeFi and using blockchain should be and always have been. The other unique aspect of our protocol, which I will be touching on a bit later, is our developer reward system. We have an open source smart contract repository that developers can deposit smart contracts into and get remunerated every time someone comes in and uses their smart contract. So this is the UI that we've put together. We'll be launching quite soon. We've been on Rococo since June. I'm going to be pushing live quite soon. Essentially, this is what it looks like when you're interacting with Turn. You're able to essentially drag and drop different functionalities in steps, knowing that once you submit a transaction like this, if something fails at, let's say, step 2, everything gets reverted back. This is, the sort of the retail-focused aspect of the protocol. Obviously, there's more complex things going on in the background, but it's a very good way of visualizing what we're actually building. Obviously, security within cross-chain is probably one of the most important aspects of it. And so we achieve that through essentially having a light client that confirms everything that's happened, looks out for results, and then Circuit, which is our blockchain, looks for the proofs in block headers and confirms that everything is valid and as it should be. We're very flexible with what languages we work with, so Ink, Solidity, anything that WASM compiles is good for us. Now, what I'm going to be talking about in this talk in particular is the narratives around cross-chain and what's going to push for the next major bull cycle in crypto. I'll be discussing the problem with bridges, and then we'll move on to XEM, why it is a great step in the right direction, as well as XBI, which is a standard that we've proposed as Turn to make XEM more usable. So the first thing to think about is what stimulates real innovation in any space. So there's a theory in an article written by Danny Grant and Nick Roseman called The Myth of Infrastructure, that apps beget infrastructure, meaning that you first need to create an app and a use case before the infrastructure to enable that and scale it follows. So if you think about it from a perspective of something like this, where you're looking at messaging, an email existed long before Ethernet, TCP/IP, SendMail, and so on. So the app was there before the infrastructure scaled out. And this is interesting to think about within the context of crypto, because a lot of infrastructure is being built, but not a lot or not enough people are still using it. And so the theory would be that maybe there needs to be an app created that then begets the infrastructure that needs to be built to stimulate its adoption. This feeds into our thesis as we're developing Turn, in that we want to enable people to build this potential next, quote-unquote killer app, while also providing the infrastructure to make that a reality. So if you're looking at something like this, bear in mind this article was written in 2018, so this is a bit dated. You see that something like CryptoKitties, which then sort of really pushed the adoption of ERC 721, and created things like OpenSea and so on. So that killer app needed to be there for that next level of infrastructure to start being built. And so the question is, how do you think about and how do you enable this infrastructure to be built? So the state of things now, well, the problem with bridges, I'd say, is probably quite clear. So as bridges stand now, the easiest setup is essentially either closed, federated systems and proof of authority models, or open and large proof of stake models. Both aren't without their flaws. You look at something like proof of authority models, obviously doesn't really tie into what the real spirit of blockchain and open source is and should be. And then you look at things like proof of stake models, which theoretically are good, but still don't come without their problems of the initial actors within those ecosystems really cementing their places, and there being very little flexibility and openness about bringing in new actors into those ecosystems. Similarly, it does open up potential hacks through essentially collusion. So you look at something like poor security design of bridge consensus, which causes high risk of collusion, and then the other problem with cross-chain is buggy implementations. So you look at something like Ronin, obviously one of the most notorious hacks to happen in the space as a whole. Essentially what happened there was 9 validators, and 4 were being run by Sky Mavis, the guys behind Axie Infinity. And so all a malicious actor needed to do was to break or take control of one more validator to fully be able to drain the network of liquidity. They essentially did that. So SkyMav has set up a system to gas optimize as much as possible during moments of high traffic for Axie Infinity. And essentially this was meant to last for a month. It didn't last for a month, they just left it running. And so the malicious actor was able to take control of that other validator as well as the other four and drain north of $600 million from the protocol. The most insane thing about this obviously being that nobody noticed for 6 days that $620 million was gone, which I'm not sure how that happens. The other another sort of problem with cross-chains, obviously buggy implementations. You can look at something like the Bifrost hack. Essentially, the hacker was able to wrap the router with their own code, with their own contract, and just get a loop going and just drain the protocol for well, a mere $5 million, but it still does demonstrate the issue with buggy implementations. So now we can talk about what the future looks like and what progress looks like and why we're very much heading in the right direction and what needs to be achieved to make that a reality. So looking at XCM and Polkadot as a whole, from a security standpoint, it is in a very great place. You get the publicly verifiable grandfather finality proofs, making it easy to implement provable light clients on top of it. You also look at the amount of validators on the network, over 1,000, over 20,000 nominators as well, with over 50% of all DOT staked. I think that's not something to be scoffed at. It's an incredible achievement in itself and really does, reinforce the security that Polkadot offers. That said, the XCM, cross-chain messaging passing protocol, isn't perfect by any means. And it is so by design. It's very generic, which it needs to be for it to work. It doesn't really adapt to particular use cases. And because of this, you've got a lot of projects using it and adopting it in quite different ways, which means that it's not particularly a standard unanimous adoption of it, which, in some regards slows down how it's actually used. There's no consistent notification standard about message delivery and results, so you've got guarantees about the delivery of messages, but you don't know what the results are that you get back. And yeah, it's just not a standard that is being used unanimously across the board in the same way as it needs to be to really deliver on its promise. So what XBI does is designed to be a simple, essentially, extension of XCM, one that allows for new use cases to start emerging. So if you look at something like, an epitome of the problem that we're trying to solve is like for the assets function, you've got ORML, which is developed by Akala, and then transfer assets, which is the sort of standard parity palette. And they're both being used, differently in different ways. And so that sort of lack of broad synchronized adoption of XCM essentially goes against what the protocol was developed to do, which is, really easily pass and transfer messages in a cross-chain realm. And so that's what XBI does. It's essentially a flexible standard that can be added without any runtime upgrade that allows for a more synonymous use of XCM. So what it does, it converts between arguments and results of WASM and EVM smart contracts. So essentially, as is becoming very much the trend, especially within the Polkadot ecosystem, everyone seems to have their own VM. You look at something like XCVM from Composable. I think Astar are working on their own VM as well. Something like a XBI format allows for a more consistent inter-VM use of XCM. The metadata standardizes result callbacks and notifications for each message. So you know what you're going to get, you know what the results are, you know what the timeouts are as well. So essentially it's a coherent high-level API for smart contracts on all remote ecosystems. And so our development of this is being pushed by the Web3 Foundation. It's the second grant we've got as a project. And it essentially highlights this need for XCM to be used in a coherent way throughout the ecosystem. as part of the fulfillment of the grant, XCM will be, XBI, sorry, will be then pushed to be adopted as a PSP, a Polkadot standard proposal. Like I said, it does really highlight this need for consistent use of a protocol like XCM to sort of level up cross-chain communication. As part of XBI, we want to make it keep as much stress of the network as possible, or the parachain runtime. So a lot of the actions do happen off-chain. So all the queue, the inputs and outputs are all processed off-chain to really keep the stress off a parachain as much as possible when adopting XBI. So it is very much an efficient way to standardize XCM as well. So essentially, this is what XBI offers. It's seamless parachain integration. It's a lightweight wrapper to XBI portal, expected to be added as a dependency to all palettes responsible for dispatching new XBI messages. So it's no events, no storage, only just dispatchable calls. And essentially, it just handles XBI lifecycle, so as part of the XBI portal. It handles the XBI lifecycle, so notifications, check-ins, checkouts, and dispatches and forwards XBI orders to their destination. And then the pallet tray is configurable, essentially very much a plug-and-play model where you can choose what functionalities are enabled through XBI. So whether you just want something like WASM, but not EVM, but you want it to be compatible with OMRL, you can configure that in a very simple plug-and-play model. And so why are we doing this? So as I mentioned, this is a need we feel to really standardize and make the use of XCM as broad as possible. Tern is going to use the XBI protocol to communicate with other parachains, and the more adoption we see of XBI, the more useful and the broadens the utility of XCM and makes cross-chain communication all the easier and seamless. And then this harks back to the point I made at the beginning, that whether apps beget infrastructure or infrastructure begets apps. We're sort of approaching it from both perspectives at Tern. We're building the cross-chain infrastructure to allow projects to interact in seamless ways to enable things like DeFi in a way that we always thought should be the case. But we're also developing this system that incentivizes the creation of different potential apps that we can then cater and develop infrastructure for. Now, what I mean when I say that is, as part of a smart contract repository that we have, if a developer contributes code to that, anyone can then go in and deploy their smart contract and the original author, because a contract is developed, deployed with full on-chain provenance, does then get remunerated every time that smart contract is used. And what that means is that we're creating this ecosystem that stimulates innovation in a way that allows for this potential next, I don't like this phrase, but killer app to be developed, where we can then start catering the infrastructure that we build to further push and develop that and stimulate its adoption. So when you think about the infrastructure and the app cycle from the initial slides I showed, we're working and tackling the problem from both sides. And so, that's the end of the talk, essentially. What we really believe is that we need to work and tackle these problems from both sides, because, looking at what's happened in the blockchain and cryptocurrency space recently, DeFi has taken considerable reputational hits. Whether NFTs are that killer use case, I'd like to think that we're doing more here than, just pushing pictures of monkeys, basically, and actually developing something really meaningful. And so we're trying to create that infrastructure that stimulates and allows people to create that meaningful stuff. So feel free to reach out if you want to join us and be part of this mission. We're always hiring. We're also looking for ambassadors to push the message of the project forward. Always looking for developers to join this ecosystem and contribute to this open source smart contract repository. And always, as always, you know, for something like XBI to really bring the value that it potentially can, it needs to be adopted. You know, a standard is only as good as the amount of people who are using it. So we're always open to partners to join our GitHub repository where we're working on XBI and help us refine it, help us make it cater to every single project who could potentially need it. Thank you for your time. Much appreciated.
Thank you too. Do you want to pick some question? Oh, do you want to pick some question? If we have, yeah, we have one. Are you okay?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Hi. Oh, my question is about like the reconciliation of XCM transfers. Like they have an outgoing message, an outgoing transfer, and an incoming transfer on the destination chain. Is there anything being done or thought about when it comes to reconciling those two? Because right now they don't share a unique ID. So if I want to track where from the perspective of the outgoing chain, the destination chain, where is this coming from, or where this transaction has originated? It's kind of hard to track. I'm speaking from a data perspective because I'm with Subsquid, and so we're interested in just indexing this kind of transactions.
So speaking from a non-data perspective, I would probably direct you to my CTO, who's sitting right there, who will definitely be able to answer that question in a more coherent and technical way. Apologies.
Do you want the mic?
Yeah, sure.
I can share mine. The same, on the scene. It's perfect.
Yeah, so as part of metadata, we have an ID, so you can essentially, if you want to keep on track which specific messages you're arriving, you can generate your own IDs, set as metadata, so it becomes part of essentially the proof of a protocol. So then on the output, when you're dispatching the messages back through the callbacks, you can then keep on track and make your own resolvers to whatever it is that you then need to like link your initial transactions to. So yeah, it has been like thought through this way. I think the best if, you know, we probably catch up later and then you go into details what is in XBI metadata, because there is also some other funky stuff like aggregated costs, you know, aggregated costs of delivery to essentially have one input that gets you through all of the hops that you need to have. So like goes into the gas fees, then goes into all of the credits that you need to have for dispatching XCM. So IDs, aggregated costs, this is all something that we kind of think of how to make it useful for actually the end use cases to then look for.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Cheers.
All right, thank you very much for this awesome talk. We'll just make a 1 or 2 minute break just for technical adjustment, and our next speaker, Jacob from Hydra, is coming right away. Thank you for your patience.
Everyone, please take your seats and welcome our last speaker of the conference, Jakub from Hydra DX.
Can you hear me? Perfect. So I'm Jacob. I think it would be useful to share with all of you and broader community how to actually not build a parachain. So you can learn you can learn from all of our mistakes, which we did so far, and we hope that it will contribute to better products, better parachains in our lovely ecosystem, and further success of .comm. So let's start. Who we are? So I'm Jacob. Who don't know me, I started Z Prime Capital. We were from the beginning pretty committed to supporting Polkadot ecosystem, but as we weren't like your usual investors, and we weren't fund, but actual investment company, we were much more on the like builder side. We were always like very hands-on to the builders. And when I was doing research for DeFi products back then in like late 2018, 2019, I was curious like if someone is building actually cross-chain Uniswap. And then when I was playing with things like Lightning Network and other DeFi protocols, back then there weren't many actually in that time. I was curious like, why is no one making it actually much more capital efficient? Because otherwise people from TradFi and other industries will be laughing at us like why we are using such clunky products and not very capital efficient, because capital efficiency is a holy grail of every financial product. And like quick disclosure, this presentation isn't meant to be to kick to anyone. It's just really about like honest feedbacks, because honest feedback is always much more useful than gossiping and doing some politics in the background. So there would be some like examples what went wrong even in other ecosystems and in other projects, and how we learn from it actually. So this will be like today's topics, our mistakes and how all of us could do it much better. Then how to handle parachain lifecycle. These are like recommendations to other fellow builders. Something about product development, because parachains and like every crypto project should boil down to making users happy, so providing them best UX possible and best product possible. Community building and marketing is something that is like often handled not in very good way, and how we can all of us build better ecosystem. So our original scenes are pretty funny. That basically very wrong prioritizations of things led us to like a lot of delays and like acting very reactionary instead of like being proactive, which leads to like to actually like worse planning and worse resource allocation. As we were actually building in the ecosystem for such time, actually from the summer of 2019, when we were seeing that things like parachains are finally going live with Rococo, which was first parachains testnet, with first versions of XCM, actually it was like version 0. And we were trying after Akala and Plasm as a third team, first cross-chain transfers on Rococo. We were like super excited, like, oh, this is it. After so many years, all the stack, or like most of the stack, is coming, and we want to be really there as soon as possible. So we got big FOMO. We were rushing, not as prepared as we wished, but it was like really like honest intention. Also, it's much easier to be very flexible and fast with like very small team, because most of the time actually, or until until fall of 2009, until fall of 2021, we were actually just 6 or 7 team, while we were building Basilisk and Hydra, and we were like often one of the first teams trying new stuff and trying to providing also feedback to Parity and just see like how is it going and how to work with these like super complex and extremely expected concepts like parachains and XCM. So that's lead to like a bizarre situation where we underestimate such obvious thing as a front end. But why? Again, because we were developing Omnipool, which was in that time like unique model for AMMs with some security concerns. It isn't ideal for all kind of trading and all kind of swapping, but you need to be like really cautious what kind of assets are getting to the pool, because then it can happen something like 2-3 months ago with fall of Terra and UST, which was actually causing a lot of losses for liquidity providers on Curve and other AMMs, because these assets drop actually like too quick. And yeah, and that was a lot of these things, a lot of these lessons we were trying to always learn from others. So we were always like geeking out too much and nerding out too much about quality of backend and quality of our Rust code and quality of palettes and quality of mechanism design. And if there are such flaws which could lead actually to economic exploits, because with emergence of DeFi, the losses which can happen to you and the exploits aren't just about like poor quality of code or like bad integrations, but these like very complex financial structures or products can lead to like unexpected behavior. So you need to really, before you launch any like DeFi product, you need to be like super sure that you understand how it's work in every condition, and you actually also need to turn to actually like hacker trying to break the system and come up with the most adversarial set of strategies how to break the system. And we were focusing extremely on this, and with all the noise and all the crazy times within the past bull market, it happens what happened. And also one of our flaw, actually, which was also Anna's intention, that we were like trying to be like radically open like too soon. So we were open sourcing almost everything from the day one. We were trying to teach newcomers how to develop in Rust, actually, how to develop on Substrate, how to do DeFi, etc., while not taking so much time on our actual product. Yeah. So the original scene started on the Hackusama, where we went for the first time live. That was actually hackathon for Kusama ecosystem, where we went for the first time live. So we showed there our enhanced XYK. In that time, it was like first implementation of something what you can see on CoSwap or GravityDEX on top of Cosmos or Osmosis, which we were calling order matching or order batching, which has like very nice property that it's causing zero slippage for the users if two transactions going in the opposite direction can be matched together. And why this was like original scene? The original scene is because Jakub, my super talented CTO, he actually spin up the whole chain with like very ugly and and lame front end, but still like working in just like 1 week with the help of 3 other guys. So when we were thinking about like product, it was like, oh, so okay, so you did this in like 1 week. So with 1 proper designer and 2 like solid or great front end developers, like we can do that in like in month or 2 months. And yeah, that bite us in the ass like many times when we were trying to release Basilisk all the time from basically last year until now. And so I would like to share some of my findings about product development and how all of you can do it much better. Obviously, we are trying also like these months try to do much better than before. So one like crucial thing with like founding any project, and I don't mean actually crypto projects, but company or like anything non-profit, that doesn't really matter. If you are starting something, no one is thinking about the project and about the use case as much as you. So as a founder, you are probably even like dreaming about the project. When you are waking up, you immediately start to think about the project. And then when you are eating, you are also thinking about the project. So it's super hard to catch up with the time spent by founders to thinking about stuff and how they should work. Something similar is probably with Gav and Robert, because also like no one was thinking about things like Polkadot ecosystem or like shared security and interoperability as much as them from 2016 until now. So like many other ecosystems, they're just like trying to catch up or they're just like reinventing the wheel and like getting a lot of attention, while things like erasure coding and data availability and all these like fancy new buzzwords, it's working at least for a year on Kusama and now also on the Polkadot. So it's really hard to catch up with the time and like knowledge transfer and vision transfer to not just to the rest of your team, but the rest of the community, and that enabling to find new community leaders or like new leaders of the project within the community is like super hard, because leaders aren't growing on the trees, and also no one is seeing to your head. So the documentation is really everything. And I remember from my like investment past, when I was throwing new fancy projects on my developer friends, like check this blockchain, check this, and actually what I found interesting is that they were assessing the quality of project, not about like TPS or virtual machine they are using or like language in which is written, like language partially, but the number one reason to assess the quality of project is actually like state of documentation. Is it really like documented everything? Is like documentation up to date? So that was another our flaw, that when we were building a lot of our features on the Basilisk, basically in like a few days or few weeks, it was all the time rush, because we were like playing with things and like trying to innovate as much as we can, but execution or proper execution is a million times more important than like ideation or ideas. Even if you have like good idea or great idea, even if it's like implemented and deployed, like any product with 0 users is like basically useless. And then we as a crypto industry, we often are avoiding very hard but good and old boring rational questions like, what's the sustainability of the project? That's the tragedy of many governance tokens. There is really no way how these projects can gain any value from the ecosystem, but in not extractable way, because then also like slapping just fee on some token or some ecosystem is leading to obvious thing to try to get rid of these extractive fees. And then like, who will be using it? Not sure if you spotted a trend of the last year that like there was like probably funded, I don't know, tens or maybe even like hundreds of tooling for the DAOs, but the real DAOs which are like working and needs this tooling, they are like, I don't know, maybe max 10 or 20. So there, we have in like very bizarre situation that we have much more tooling for DAOs than actual DAOs which needing. And also, is the timing right? Because timing is often most important factor of success of any project and any company. The same like they were like bunch of there was like dozens of social networks before Facebook and dozens of search engines before Google. But the timing is right, and that's, for example, our reason why we for example, currently scratch the LBP palette and LBP functionality, while we also like put in a lot of effort to make it better than the Solidity implementations, which you can see on it. But yeah, the timing is basically not right for it. So, and also what is like super dangerous for any founders or any project is like printing or like getting laugh in every new idea, and basically you need to be like super cautious that not every idea is actually what you think is like totally awesome and people will love it. Sometimes you can be like more far from the truth, and don't forget that your project is basically not isolated in the space or in the sea of crypto. Basically, we have so many third-party integrations and dependencies, especially in the Polkadot ecosystem, that you shouldn't expect as us that everything would be working super smoothly on the first time, especially when a whole stack is quite experimental and pretty fresh new. So, as I mentioned before, our like desire to be like radically decentralized from the beginning as soon as possible leads us to wasting a lot of our internal resources and wasting a lot of time, while the intention was extremely honest. But I was trying to find out what we were doing bad. Also, when the company or the product delivery wasn't like very successful or very sufficient. So I was digging to the few working DAOs, and that's basically what I found out, that unclear development transparency and priorities is like it's decreasing your ability to plan properly. Also, usually like lack of follow-up steps for any or smaller, bigger milestones is like reasoning for, and any like supporting reasoning for the like proposed solutions, like why we need to change direction, why we need to pivot, why we need to introduce this, or why we need to scratch this, is like extremely confusing for developers, and then it's extremely confusing for the community, and it can like erode all your all the positive sentiment which you got so far. And as I mentioned before, the different understanding of vision and project priorities and needs is like one of the biggest problem, not just in the crypto, but like in like any project or any company in general to solve. I found a great tweet from Arthur from the Defiance Capital, which like wrap it much better. That information asymmetry is like extremely hard to solve, and like we can think that DAOs will magically solve this. And obviously, another thing which is often forgotten, that usually there is like no accountability between founders or within DAOs, especially when these DAOs are operating after founder left or abandoned the project, and DAO is like completely leaderless. So this was my favorite meme actually from the 2017 and 2018, because I saw probably all the ideas, all white papers, all possible ideas about how to use blockchain with AI and like supply chains and medical data and privacy. Like I think like there was really like white papers for everything already, and people are often asking me, especially like last month and last weeks, like, Jakub, what is like next exciting project for you? And I was like, dude, I don't know. Like we saw really from the time we are in crypto probably everything, but there is like lack of projects which are executing like very well. And also you need to understand that the infrastructure who should support all these crazy innovative ideas and use cases like Polkadot, Cosmos, Solana, Near, and all other stuff, that was funded and started in 2016, and it's everything just coming to life. So it didn't even like have time to solidify and settle, and to enable creation of new new use cases on top of it. So sorry, this slide is in the wrong order, but yeah, you can see. I will fix that after the presentation. So as I mentioned, when we were heading to actual release all the time, this was, for example, from the beginning of June. Like we thought, like, oh, we are like pretty close to release. We were thinking how we can harden our system and how we can test it more properly, and we started to work on the monitoring tools based placed on our infrastructure, and then maybe in the future even wrap to the runtime that it will measure suspicious activity, because the most common behavior of any hacker or exploiter is that exploit the system and run away with as many funds as possible at once. And as we were started to work on it, Cosmos actually was a Cosmos-based project. Osmosis was exploited by bad refactor of withdrawing LP shares from the AMM. And what was bizarre is that when we were putting together a list of all possible exploits in the DeFi, which happened so far, we find out that we had the same bug in the XYK of Basilisk, and even more bizarre is that piece of code was oldest one. The most people review it. It was reviewed by many third parties. It was even audited, and it was still sitting there. So it really shocked us, but then we obviously turned it to something positive. So we, Colin and our new colleague Daniel, they put together a great testing framework which can test if your invariance, which needs to hold, for example, most famous invariant in DeFi or AMMs is x, xy equals k, if it's holding or not. And if the actual code implementation is following the specification, and if it's working properly. So as I mentioned, these slides or this presentation is not about kicking others, but how we can learn from mistake of others and ourselves to build better and more robust systems. And also obviously you can test as hard as you can, and you can do as much as you can, but still there could be things out of your reach which can go wrong. So why I want to cover community and marketing, because what I realized is it's super common in crypto development and crypto products lifecycle, is that founders are extremely hyped about about what they can introduce and how they can change the world, or how they can change at least the industry. And that's leading to a lot of consequences, but let's start with easier one. At first, a lot of parachain teams, after our success with LBP and crowd loans, they were their CMOs were calling me and asking me hey Jakub, which marketing company did you use? Great job, great numbers. And I was nothing, no, it was just us. And he was still insisting no, but which company, which influencer? And dude, the blogs, we just write 3 nice blogs. And I was sitting in the communities in the Telegram channel and trying to answer on everything in unique way, and spend as much time as I can with people within the community, and also answering on all possible DMs, which is unfortunately not the case anymore. But we were really just trying to be us. So we were not pretending that we are some guys in suits going to crash all the banks, but we were really just us. Also, what we saw in some past project in the ecosystem using paid shield, influencers, even bots, it's super obvious, guys, don't do it. And what makes sense to you, back to the product, what makes sense to you might be actually extremely confusing to community, which which happened to us during like New Year, where we announced like major change in our tokenomics and introducing like second pool token from the security reasons, which you can see on the curve by bribing their governance while they're obviously open to the bribing. But we also saw a similar issue currently in Bancor. So we saw that like last year, we had a lot of internal discussions like why we need to change it. So it like totally made sense for us. But when we published the blog, there was like a huge community pushback and people spreading FAT. Actually, they use it for sharing like propaganda about us that we are going to rug pull community and why we are doing it during like the holidays where not many people are paying attention. And I need to stand up with Colin, our head of research, and do like very proper AMA to answer everything. But what really like surprised us that maybe in the first time in the history of internet, people who were spreading FAT and who were like very aggressive towards us initially, they were like excusing themselves for such behavior. And then we also realized that maybe like all communication needs to be done like completely different. So that's all. The whole your product cycle, but also communication should be something what is called expectation management, because the excitement what you can feel can like totally blind you. You should always expect unknown unknowns, which will slow you dramatically down, and then don't overpromise. Like we with 3 weeks, it became the meme, but also like when we say that first time, we really thought it. And then we were like unwrapping all the unknown unknowns, as I mentioned, which were like waiting for us. So, oh, sorry. So then when we were, how can I launch it? Then when we were like answering, then when we were trying to explain people, sorry, can you make it louder? So then when we were like explaining the community, like where we are right now and like what all roadblocks we are hitting, it was like very unpleasant, and it was like, again, eroding the sentiment for the project. Sorry, is it possible to launch it or not? Anyway, guys, I will share the presentation with you, and like you can listen it at your home. Anyway, sorry about it. So development takes time. This is from the great blog from Godfather of DeFi, Andre Cronje, when he was like really pissed about like state of everything, and he has basically like burnout. So this is so common to whole crypto. This is another quick cut from AMA with Vitalik and Omisgo. Omisgo was like one of the most promising projects for scaling Ethereum and crypto back then in 2018. And in this video, which I'm not sure if it will be working again properly, actually Vitalik in 2018, he was promising there, but I believe that honestly, his wording or communication was completely honest. He was so exciting about potential of Omisgo and their solution that he was mentioning on this video that Ethereum with sharding and Omisgo, which will come soon, actually never come, will scale to millions of transactions, even like billions. he was really saying that. And I actually, a few days ago, I met a guy who was close to the OmisGo team or part of the team, and we were talking about this session, and he told me it's also there, like when Vitalik was exciting and like explaining how Ethereum will be scaling to tens of millions transactions per second, the poor developers, they were like sweating a lot and like super nervous. Okay, even without sound, then you will see at the end of the video that they are they are not very sure about the promises. So. Yeah, sure. You see that guy who was like biting to his lips, but yeah, it's happening to all of us and founders that we all the time we mean it. Obviously, except of scammers, we mean it like seriously because we are so exciting to bring the products to you. But then just like the harsh reality of technology and how early we are is like pretty strong slaps to our faces. So yeah, and it went so far that actually like Andre had burnout 2 times and rage quit, and like last time when he rage quit, he didn't even like spare any time for writing part 3, because actually when I was reading it, he's pretty repeating himself anyway. So building might be quite disappointing, not just to the community, but as you. And sometimes the channels can lose like this. So for ending this presentation, what we believe that we can learn from mistake, not just from ourselves, but everyone, and how we see or how we perceive even like other DeFi projects within the Dosama. We don't see any one of you as a competition, but in like good manner, because people like market makers and people who wants to do ARBs in the Dosama ecosystem and flashbot searchers, etc. They are excited about like Hydra and Basilisk. They are excited about other projects. They are excited about XCM and shared security. They want to use it, but they are asking me all the time, like, Jakub, like, what's the state? And like, when there will be like hundreds of millions TVL at least, or even billions, because like our size is size, and we need to. It needs to make sense for us. So I would be most happy if any other DeFi parachains in Dosama or DeFi protocols on top of things like Moonbeam and Moonriver and A-Star will have hundreds of millions TVL, even like billions, because the real competition is outside of the Dosama, and even outside of the Dosama, from the folks like Solana and Cosmos, you should not forget that like a real final boss isn't actually any crypto project. So please don't be extractive, help others. Feel free to reach out to us for any help. Like for example, Colin, recently he found some bug in the fellow DeFi project, and yeah, they are happy. We are happy that we could help them, and we are here to help to all of you. Same as when we are working with someone, we often like finding some bugs, or we are helping with integrations. Also on the other side, other teams found bugs in our implementations, so it's usually like very pleasant. We just need to be like open to everybody. And please don't do politics, because it's cheap. It's really like we can do much better than guys in institutions and politics. And please open source as much as we can. I know that fear of the competition is hard, but it's really helping to find potential exploits much sooner than it can happen. And my last point is that you please don't hesitate. What we saw so far is the many projects aren't asking as much as you can right people, or they are not participating in like great projects or programs like Substrate Builders program, where there is like dozens of Parity engineers super knowledgeable about tech can save a lot of your time, or researchers in the Web3 Foundation, please ask them as much as we can. That's what we were doing most of the time, and mostly think about how you can leverage shared security and treasury, because shared security enabling us to be much more capital efficient than any other ecosystems, so we don't need to inflate and print. Money printers go brr, or token printers doesn't need to go as brr as is sometimes the case. So thanks for your attention. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. We would love to...
Thank you, everyone. And of course, GM Paris. So this was actually our last talk. Thank you very much, Jacob, for making the pleasure last as much as possible. We would like to welcome you to go to the 9th floor. So we will have a closing cocktail. Feel free, there is like basically free drinks there. So we would love to have you there. Yeah.
And I would also love to thank everyone for coming, everyone who joined us online. I'm not sure if this is also streamed, but thanks to everyone who came and who watched our show. We will put all of our talks online soon, and thank you for each and every sponsor and each and every talk.
Yeah, great thanks to our partners. Thanks again, and see you upstairs for a drink. Enjoy.
9th floor.